non-tagged redfish, trout, grouper, kingfish, and dolphin, as well as a tarpon division. Then we have youth, kayak, ladies, and a trash division. One of the things I wanted to share with you on our Coastal Kick Plastic Trash Division, which is very unique, I was just sharing that here in the front, is that this year, if you gather a 5-gallon bucket full of trash, you submit a picture of it, and on the official measuring device, adults, you have the opportunity, and anyone who's participating has the opportunity to win $1,500 cash, and that's presented by Waxhead Sunscreen. But youth anglers get a half an hour of community service for every 5-gallon bucket of garbage that they collect and properly dispose of. And they can pick up as many as they want, and they can do it on their own time. So it's not like it's mandatory that you have to attend an event to get your community service hours. You get your community service hours by going in every day that you're on the water picking up a 5-gallon bucket. And at the end of the summer, or at your leisure, the youth can email me their community service hour log. I will go back and make sure that that is the proper amount of 5-gallon buckets, and then I will sign off on their log for them. So I have a way of knowing for sure what they've done. We have the Hummingbird Tarpon division. With tarpon season coming up, it's really a great opportunity. There's $10,000 worth of product that you can win in that. You can win a brand new Altera Minn Kota trolling motor, and then the Hummingbird Solix 10, which has side imaging, which can help you find tarpon after you catch your first one. Then you can find it. I think the Hummingbird is almost unfair to fish and fisheries because of how easy it is for you to find your fish. Some of the other divisions that are really, really unique is the TH Marine non-tagged redfish division. So now, in the tagged redfish division, just so that you know, in that tagged redfish division, this year we're releasing 167 tagged redfish in the coastal waters of Florida. On average, 4 per coastal county. But there are 3 counties that are going to get 8 fish apiece because their organization, their Economic Development Council, felt it was critical for them to get people down and fishing and seeing their area. One is Crystal River in the Citrus County. The other is Brevard County, and the other is Charlotte County. All of those counties have 8 fish apiece, so you'll have the opportunity to catch fish. This past year, how many redfish do you think were recaptured out of the 167 fish that were released? How many?
35.
Very close.
36.
How many do you think? 36.
Ooh, good guess.
36 redfish.
Pink hat, pink hat.
36.
Thank you.
That's a live target lure. That's their new shrimp. 36 tagged redfish were recaptured in the coastal waters of Florida, and of those 36, only 2 guys were registered. 2.
Yo.
That's hot.
The first guy got his choice of any of the prizes available, and just so you know what's available, there's a brand new GMC pickup truck from Conley Buick GMC in Bradenton, a Sierra. There's a brand new Contender from Contender Boats, powered with a Yamaha and has a Rolls axle trailer, one of the best trailers ever made. And then we have a Pathfinder, completely outfitted with a Hummingbird unit and a Minn Kota trolling motor, and sits on a trailer. There's a Hughes Redfisher, a Carolina skiff, a Relentless aluminum flats boat, and then for youth anglers, if you guys catch a tagged redfish, you win a brand new Carolina skiff with a 40 horsepower motor, Minn Kota trolling motor, Hummingbird electronics, and a Talon.
Wow.
So
That's you all over there, Joe.
yes,
That's pretty
so
nice.
if you catch a tagged redfish, you can win that.
yeah, be
Now, there's not only tagged redfish, but there's also tagged mahi, or dolphin. And the first member and registered angler who catches a tagged mahi wins $10,000 cash. So there's a lot of really great prizes. We pay out 6 places in every division. Almost every one of our divisions is done by a random drawing. So that's enough of my advertising. So how many of you in here are registered or are getting registered this year for STAR? I love this. I don't have to work any harder on that. So now you guys know it's a really simple process. If you have the app on your phone, remember the app will update on its own, and it should be available right now for you to do practice tournaments and practice submissions. And then when the tournament starts, everything that you have in there will be erased, and you'll be able to go back in and start logging your catches. I'm just going to give you a little hint. There's a strategy to fishing STAR and winning. You can enter one fish per division per day. So if you're a kayak angler, you can go out, and the first redfish you catch, you can enter in the redfish division, the first legal redfish. You catch a legal trout, I'm going to enter that in the trout division that day. Then you catch a legal snook, I'm going to enter that in the snook division. And then you're just lucky enough to catch another legal trout, then I'm going to enter that trout in the kayak division. How many entries do you have for that day? 4. You increase your ability to be drawn for a win the more entries that you make into the competition. So it's a strategy. Think about it and enter the fish as you go through that. The grouper division, in the grouper division you can enter red, black, gag, and scamp. You cannot enter all 4 of those species, but only one that you catch that day. So you have the opportunity to do that. With the tarpon, if you catch a tarpon, doesn't matter what size it is. There's some really specific requirements with tarpon. Tarpon are an amazing fish, and they're a great sport fish. So the biggest part of the tarpon division is that you properly fight that fish, land that fish quickly, get it to the boat. You gotta keep it in the water. I don't care what size it is. That fish cannot come out of the water to take a picture of it in the water with the device next to it. The device does not need to be open. All I need to see is that you have a tarpon. If your tarpon's flopping next to the boat, and you can put your device next to it, someone else take a picture and be done with it. As long as I can see the device and that you have that fish under control. If it's a big tarpon, I need you to revive that fish before you release it. There's specific handling requirements on tarpon, so in order for it to be a legal fish, you would need to revive that fish to release it. Okay? So now let's talk about a few things that are going on right now. I know there are some questions, and I want to get right to the point on what's going on with our fisheries. Summer's coming around. I still think that we have a lot of opportunity for a lot of fish to be caught. There's been, FWC has done some things that were just released. Not all of what was endorsed by our organization, Coastal Conservation Association. I just want everybody to be clear on that. We are conservationists. We want to conserve our resources, but we're not about removing the ability of our recreational anglers to catch fish and keep fish. So when the recommendations were made and CCA was asked what our opinion was, we thought that it was important that we have some kind of restrictions on trout, but we were as shocked by a total closure on trout as everyone else was. There can be all kinds of reasoning behind that. I think that's a lot of fishing pressure, and when you close snook and you close redfish, all of our recreational anglers are looking at other species to harvest, and the only one that's left that is readily accessible and that you're going to spend a lot of time catching is trout. The recommendation by FWC initially was to have a closure in February for trout, to not allow for a trout over 20 inches to be kept, and they were going to reduce the bag limit. We were not expecting a total closure. So me personally, and this is not speaking from a CCA standpoint, from me personally, I am not disappointed by the total closure. I am not. I think that it's necessary for a short period of time. Yes, sir.
You think it'll hurt the mangrove snapper population though?
Well, I think it's going to redirect anglers to going to a different species and targeting a different species. They're going to target mangrove snapper, they're going to target sheep's head, they're going to target flounder, mackerel, kingfish. There's going to be a lot of other fish that are going to receive some additional pressures. Do I think it's going to hurt our mangrove snapper population? I don't know what the population is right now, and I'm not a biologist, but again, when you transfer all the fishing pressure to another species, there can be some issues there. That's why sometimes total closures are not always the best option, but we do need some relief from the amount of pressure that is happening on our trout population. Yes, sir.
How long ago did that happen? Because it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I thought it was you were allowed 3 for a bag limit, and there was going to be none over 20.
That's correct. The recommendation was made by FWC to the commissioners that there be a change in the bag limits. But May 1st in Havana, at the FWC meeting, the commissioners chose to completely close from Pasco County south the trout harvest.
So this just happened.
This happened
It
May
starts May
1st.
the 11th.
It starts May the 11th.
It goes through the end of the month.
Pardon me?
End
It
of the
goes
year?
through the end of the month
End of-
until they readdress it on the 25th.
The other piece they were gonna do, Jim, was not let the captain have.
Yeah, keep
Is-
it.
keep- There's 3 of us on a boat with the captain. You don't get to keep for 4, you get to keep for 3.
Yes, and that will be, that is one that will, a rule and policy that I believe that they're going to implement as well, is that there will be no catch or bag limit for captains for hire for trout. That is already the regulation for snook and redfish. A captain for hire cannot keep a snook nor a redfish for his charter. So, yeah. So on to more exciting news. Let's talk about, I'm going to teach you how to catch them so you can release them, and that Mother Nature can do what she needs to recuperate, and then when they reopen the season, we'll have lots of trout, and we'll have lots of redfish, and we'll have lots of snook. I can tell you, I was just the weighmaster, and we do it through electronics, so it's all catch, photo, release, for a tournament that was a day and a half over at the on St. Pete Beach in Tampa Bay. There were 87 anglers, there were 27 boats, and there were over 288 fish caught and released. Of the 288, 66 of those were redfish, and those 66 redfish, over 80% of those fish were over 24 inches. We had some 30s, 34s, 33, 32s. The snook were different. There were only a very limited number of large snook. We had, I think, 10 snook over 28 inches. The remainder of the fish were all that 20 to 28 inch class range. Then we had some beautiful trout, a ton of trout. And those trout that came in, we had probably about 20, I think I counted 26 trout that were over the 20-inch range, and the remainder of those fish were small fish. But all of those fish were released. So there are good fish in Tampa Bay. South Florida, not so much. They've been really hurt very badly.
Well, it's my understanding that one of the reasons they didn't put Tampa Bay into it was because so many of there wasn't that much red tide this far north, but the fish were pushed here, and that's where they're at.
The fish, this is their hypothetical supposition that those fish actually experienced something and knew something was happening and moved. I can tell you that when there was red tide down near Little Gasparilla Island, I was still able to go out and find clean pockets of water and catch fish all around Charlotte Harbor. Those fish just moved into those clean pockets of water. So the fish are wise enough when they start to experience that they move out. And I think you're right. I think a lot of the fish that were in those areas moved north into Tampa Bay. But I also have to tell you, I think a lot of the reason that total closure was put all the way to Pasco County is because not only do the fish move north,
The fishermen move north.
but your anglers move north as well.
I think a lot of the fish moved to Levy County. I've been talking to friends that live up there, and they're just killing it off Cedar Key and Yankee Town and
That's
those
where I
areas.
used to fish. That's I recently moved from Gilchrist County to Sarasota, and yes, and that area. But I can tell you that area this time of the year has always been on fire. I just think it's again like social media, and I hate to I'm not a naysayer of social media, but social media kind of blows things out of proportion a lot.
Really?
When you look at, so there's not a lot of fish being caught in South Florida, and then there's a lot of fish being caught. If you look back, there were a lot of fish last year being caught in Cedar Key, Crystal River, Steenhatchee. Those areas were getting a lot of fish caught. But now when you're not seeing a lot of fish pictures and all of a sudden you're seeing a lot of fish pictures from that area, you go, wow, they have more fish than any other place. They do at this time, but it's the same amount of pictures. It just appears to be more. But I can tell you that's where I have fished for the last 4 years. And I would go out on a day and push pole around in my skiff, and I would never see another boat. And I would see hundreds of redfish pushing oyster bars and waking. And trout, big schools of trout that I thought were redfish coming into the potholes, and they're trout. So that area up there doesn't receive the same amount of pressure.
Well, I grew up fishing that area as well,
Yeah.
and I remember I can also remember it pre-net ban when catching a redfish was a historic event that ended up in the Chiefland Citizen.
Oh, yeah.
If you caught a redfish in the
You
late
were-
'70s, early '80s, it was newsworthy.
Well, and here's another reason, and I won't forget you. Here is another really great reason. Tampa Bay used to be where you wanted to go to catch redfish, but remember, FWC has the hatchery over in Ruskin, and they were releasing millions and millions of redfish into Tampa Bay. I released the 1 millionth redfish in Tampa Bay with Governor Jeb Bush, and we were releasing millions. I was a volunteer. We released redfish all the time, and they stopped that program. Duke Energy, who CCA Florida works with, Duke Energy has been for the last 10 years, 15 years, their mariculture center has been releasing hundreds and hundreds, thousands of redfish and trout in that area. And they are why that area is so plentiful with fish. They rear and release thousands of redfish and thousands of snook every year. And they helped our organization release the 16,000 redfish that we released in South Florida. Additional 30 redfish, breeder redfish per coastal county were released in each area, and those were all Duke Energy fish. And those fish were all 4 to 6 inches. They were not like being released here. They were releasing the little fry that were 2 to 3 inches. We're releasing 4 to 6 inch fish. So those fish are actually fish that survive better than your little fry. So that's the reason that area has a much better fish population right now. Yes, sir.
You don't think the migration of the big redfish didn't push up north?
You know, seeing the amount of big redfish that was caught this afternoon, I would tell you, I still think, and watching, if you go onto the FWC website, they will share with you when their spotter and tracker planes actually spot big schools of redfish. They won't tell you where, but they'll tell you a proximity, and they'll tell you how many big schools of redfish are moving up and down the coast, and these are those big breeder redfish. The last time we looked, there were 6 different schools, and they were saying there was over 300 big breeders in every one of those schools.
Yeah, I've seen them offshore myself.
Yes, so
A few times.
do I think those are the fish that are moving north? I don't believe so. I think they're migratory and they bounce back and forth. But what I do think happens is those 20, the smaller fish are the ones that are all moving north. And that's what they're experiencing up there in that Hernando County area. Hernando County, you can catch a 20-inch redfish all day long and catch hundreds of them.
Now, I think one of the problems is with our redfish is the shrimp population that we used to have here was phenomenal.
You used to have a really great shrimp population. I used to shrimp out of here all the
Me
time.
too.
And the shrimping used to be amazing. You don't have that. Remember, redfish feed on crustaceans and shrimp, and over 80% of their diet comes from organisms that survive on oyster bars. We're reestablishing oyster bars in Tampa Bay. You've got to have oyster bars in order to have good redfish.
Is there a way to donate or sponsor to get more oyster beds in a certain area?
So right now, CCA, you can put together groups and reach out to CCA and like Tampa Bay Watch. We work very closely with Tampa Bay Watch and ourselves. We put together and have to petition and go to the state and get permission to be able to establish oyster bars. Now we can do island renourishment and shoreline renourishment where we take the big hemp bags full of oysters
Right.
that have been cured and dried, and we put those back out, and that helps with oyster reestablishment. But there are projects all the time that we're working on in Tampa Bay, and you can get with your Tampa Bay chapter. If you're a member of the CCA organization, you work with your chapter, you can do it as a club. Your Southshore anglers can work with CCA to put together a day where you guys go out and lay out oysters.
You know Paul Kelman.
Yes.
He's been with us forever. That's where you got him from.
Paul is actually on the STAR committee with me and working with me now. And I will tell you, that's a great function for your chapter to do, for your club to do.
I've seen they do a lot of work for the. They do a lot of work for the South Shore, but I didn't see like the Wheaton Island area has the oyster beds and the area has gone down big time since I was a kid.
That Wheaton, and so you have to remember, Wheaton is a preserve.
Right.
So in order for us to get permission to put anything in a preserve is, plug your ears, son. Plug your ears. Damn near impossible. So, yeah.
Forgot to plug my ears.
So I'm just telling you, it's a challenge.
Wheaton Island was beautiful. When I was a
Wheaton
kid.
Island was, I fished there for years. I can tell you, it is really a challenge to get permission to be able to put oysters in the water. The nice thing is, we're putting in oysters that have been cured for months in the sun, so we're not putting anything back into the water that is not of natural substrate, which is pretty impressive. We have in Apopka acres and acres of oysters that oyster bars and restaurants from all over the state of Florida, when they serve oysters and they're shucked oysters, they dump those oysters into big tubs, and our organization goes around and collects those big tubs, takes those tubs, and we take them to our site, dump them out, rake them out, and rake them so that the sun cures them. Then we have to go back after they're cured, bag them, and place them in the waters. And it's much better than putting cement in the water. It's estimated that a cement oyster dome takes anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks for oyster spat to attach to a cement oyster dome. It takes less than 5 to 6 days for oyster spat to attach to a natural oyster shell.
Wow.
So the idea of putting natural oyster shell in the water is really important, very important.
4 of those little islands off of Williams Park that they've really worked on. Don't ask me which ones they are.
Bear Can Island, Fantasy Island.
Is there a honeymoon?
Those islands are the
Bird
islands that
Island.
we've been working to reestablish.
Yep.
And if you go by there, you'll see, and in the kitchen, you'll see some in the kitchen. You'll see the big oyster bags that are put all around the islands, those are projects that we're doing, and we need volunteers all the time. So we can
You
use
don't
your
have to
help.
be, you don't have to be a member to volunteer.
No, you don't have to be a member of our organization to volunteer. So, you can come out
I'll
and
tell you,
help.
we did a cleanup 3 years ago, and I don't know how many kids used it for their, what do they call that, John?
Community hours.
Their
Community
community hours or
service.
whatever. I signed the message papers for those kids.
Well, I have a young man, and this is something you might want to think about too. I have a young man in Bradenton, and he, in his middle school, started a group, and they go out every weekend, and they pick up garbage, and they do trash cleanups, and they pick a shoreline, and there's 10 or 12 of the kids, and they go out and they pick a shoreline, and they clean up all the garbage. The last cleanup that he did was 2 weekends ago, and they picked up over 600 pounds with 12 kids. Picked over 600 pounds of garbage. The mother asked me if I could get someone. I had Waste Management came out and picked up all the garbage that they had put out. So they were picking up buckets and black trash bags, and they picked up and stacked it all, and we had it picked up, and then I wrote them their community service hours
We
for them.
did 9 places on the South Shore, and some guys did some work up at the Gandy. They brought 11 of the big bags down. We had a pile from here to the front of the store that was, what?
6 feet, 7 feet high.
Yeah. I don't know how many crab traps.
Yeah.
Oh, I know there were
Tires.
70 tires.
Yeah.
The crazy take of the day was giraffes. Plural giraffes. On one of the islands, they found a giraffe that came from a McDonald's deal.
Uh-huh.
On his son, was it son?
Yeah.
Found a, you put the gnomes you see in the front
Oh,
yard,
yeah.
only it was a giraffe.
Oh my goodness.
And then you found a giraffe.
Inflatable pool toy giraffe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, can't make it up.
No.
Can't make it up.
No, well, I can tell you we're doing, in June, there is it's on an app. In June, we have a full month where you can collect garbage. It's online. It's for Earth Day, where you can go on and get your own groups and do your own little trash cleanups anywhere. And we're doing rewards. You'll get Costa sunglasses, Academy Sports and Outdoors, gift certificates. You get gift certificates from all over the place. And we reward you for your garbage. We just do random drawings of the entries and give them out. So all we're trying to do is to provide incentive for people to clean up our local waters.
And for any of you that don't know, the first of Earth Day, I went to school in a town in southern Delaware, and we did a trip the same day as the first Earth Day to DC. And we had a lousy spring, terrible winter, lousy spring, and it was the first spring day. And that's why there were so many people on the mall that day. They weren't, Earth Day didn't have anything to do with it. It was the fact they could go out and eat lunch or just go out on their break from work or whatever. And there was a ton of school kids there that day. But I was there for the first Earth Day. I didn't pick anything up. I didn't throw anything away either. But
Well, that's one of the things that we try to, I see your cup there. I don't know what you got in it, but water,
Soda.
soda. I see other cups here. I would ask
Yankee.
if you could try to reduce the amount of plastic that you have in your life. It's really simple by not using plastic bags, refusing to take plastic bags. There are a lot of companies that are no longer going to be using plastic bags. Publix is talking about possibly completely doing away with their plastic bags.
trust me, 30 years in the grocery business, 25 years ago, they were pushing plastic bags to save the trees.
Yes.
So it's one of those moments where you just kind of go, wait a minute.
Which I didn't even replant my.
I was doing the right thing 25 years ago. What happened?
Yes, yes.
So,
But I didn't even replant my pine trees in Levy County because the value of them is so low because people aren't using paper.
Yes. Well, hopefully when we get more plastic being outlawed, they'll start using paper and using paper products. And there are so many companies now that are going away from the plastic usage, but plastic is,
Saving paper, you're not saving the rainforest. All you're doing is putting development on St. Joe Paper Company property,
yes,
building golf courses.
golf courses and houses. I can tell you, plastic is the number one issue and with garbage that we find. I don't know if any of you have cleaned up fish and found plastic in them, but I am repeatedly finding redfish that have plastic in their guts, and it's not normal. When you find a beautiful 26-inch redfish that has a bottle cap, has a mouthpiece from a snorkel, and has other pieces of plastic, a damper, stopper, some kind of stopper was in his stomach. And this was a redfish that I caught up in Steenhatchee. Fish are consuming plastic. We use soft plastics to catch them. I mean, you think about that. So some of the things I want to talk about tonight are conservation habits. I try never to touch my fish when I get them in the boat. Now, since you have catch and release and you're not going to be bringing them in the boat, one of the things I love is my Boga grip. I don't know how many of you use. If you've got a plastic gripper, you're going to want to use one of these. You can use your plastic gripper. Removing the hook from your fish is very simple. A lot of times you go down, you grab your fish, it's there, you take your pliers and you rip it out of its mouth. I try to put this on my line. If I'm not going to touch my fish, if you're not going to bring the trout in the boat, if you're not going to use it anyway, I bring it down the line, down to the curve of the hook, the belly of the hook, in the fish's mouth, turn it upside down, shake it, and your fish will come up. So you don't need to have all these fancy hookers and all the fancy devices, although I bet Mike would like for us to purchase them here at his store. You can do that.
Boga grips cost a lot more.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, he has Boga grips, so you can go and buy your Boga grip. And then they are really great for handling your fish. The one thing I will tell you with a fish when you have them on the Boga grip, it's nice that it spins, but if you're not careful with a fish on a Boga grip, you can actually break their jaw. If you're not careful, and the grippers that clamp down forward, you can break their lip here, and breaking a fish's jaw or breaking his lip makes it really difficult for them to feed, and if they're not eating, they're not surviving. So that's one of the things that I would share with you. But the Boga grip is a great tool for many, many, many purposes. Managing your fish with your Boga grip, one thing you weigh it this way, but don't photograph it holding it up this way. If you're going to weigh it, then take and support your fish. It's easy to spin this back up under your fish and hold it in this fashion so that you don't see the Boga grip. Keeping it in the side of the mouth, not in the lip itself and bending it under, but keeping it in the side of the mouth. That way you can get your pictures. The best pictures you can get, and if you're fishing inshore, or get in the water with your fish, get a picture of it in the water, hang over the side of the boat, but try to keep your fish in the water. Another little great tactic that I suggest, if you're going to take your fish out of the water, you're going to get good pictures, have all your equipment ready. Put your fish in the net, make sure you have your phone ready, your camera ready, whatever. As soon as you pull that fish out of the water, hold your breath. If you can no longer hold your breath, that fish needs to go back in the water because he can't hold his breath any longer either. So I just suggest keeping your fish healthy is a great way of you hold your breath while you're doing whatever you need to do with your fish, and then put the fish back in the water at that point. I'm a big proponent of artificials. I use a lot of artificials when I fish, and I know I talked about this in the past, but I have 3 things that I look for when I'm fishing. One of the things, we've talked about it before, but one of the things that I didn't mention in the past is water temperature. And I wanted to talk to you about water temperature tonight because water temperature is really critical when you're going after fish. Not only are you looking for your bait, not only are you looking for habitat, and you want to have moving water, you want to have water temperature. Water temperature, when you're using artificials, tells you, first of all, where to look for those fish, because fish like specific temperatures. If it's too cold, they're not going to be in super cold water. If it's too hot, they're not going to be there. They're like the baby bear, it's just right. They want the water just right. So with a redfish can withstand up to 80 to 85 degree water. It's not their favorite water. Between 72 and 78 degrees is what a redfish really likes. 72 is on the cold side. If you've got 72 degree water, what are you going to do with any of the baits that you use?
Slow them down.
Slow them down. That's exactly right. You're going to slow them down. So when you slow your bait down, you're going to work it at a different tempo as well. What you have is you have fish that are, because they're a little colder, they're not moving as fast, they're waiting for the bait to come to them. So water temperature is critical. When you look at tarpon, when do tarpon come in and start to come to our area? May and June, right? Water temperature is heating up. Tarpon, their water temperature that they like the warmer water, they like it at 78 degrees. So 78 degrees is an ideal temperature for tarpon. They don't like it too cold, they don't like it too hot. 75 to 78 degrees is a great temperature for tarpon. Snook, on the other hand, like cooler water. Snook don't like the water if it gets up over 77 degrees. So you're looking for a water temperature in that area. If the water temperature gets below 70 degrees, your fish change the way that they function. A front rolls in and you've got clouds and rain like we have right now, and it dumps cool water into the bay. It changes where those fish are going to be. The overcast changes where those fish are going to be feeding and how they feed. So take into consideration water temperature. In the heat of summer, someone said you said you're coming down to Boca Grande and Little Gasparilla Island in July. In July, you can't fish shorelines, you can't fish mangrove edges, you have to fish that deeper water, because the water up on the edges and in the mangrove edges, it's going to be 80, 82, 84, 85, and in the very back country, that water is going to be in the 90s. And there's not going to be fish that are going to be laying up in that backwater. You'll have mullet, but you won't have your predatory fish. So that also dictates, winter and summer dictate where those fish will be, whether they're in the back of the creek or out on the front of the bars or out on the points and on the beaches. As it heats up, the water's cooler in deeper passes and in creek mouths and where you have moving water. The moving water is cooler, so you want to make sure that you're looking for those types of things. I'm one that uses just a few different baits, and when I'm talking about baits and you're looking at baits, one of the things that I say is really critical when you're looking for baits is matching the hatch. And I think we may have talked about this before, but right now it's spring, and inside, when you throw a cast net, your baits are little inside. As you get closer to the beaches and off the beaches, I can show you some pictures of the bait that these guys had today that they got up in Tampa Bay. Their baits are only about that big right now. As it gets further into the summer, the baits will get bigger. Well, that's when you increase the size of your baits. So most of my baits right now that I'm using are smaller baits. So what I'm looking at are the little profiles and littler baits. Matching the hatch again is color. So we're also looking at color. If I've got dirty water, I'm using darker colored baits. And I'm using dark colored fleck, and I'm using baits that have dark colors, red, black, and gold. If I'm fishing really clean water, clear water, I'm using lighter color baits with silver fleck. So these are all things that you have to remember. Starting to think, I would have been ugly on my toes. just little things to remember. If you look at some of the mirror deans and the mini deans come in a lot of different colors, but this is one of my favorite baits. Next to, and I've talked about it before, but some of the live target lures. This is one of go-to baits. It will catch tarpon all day long. And I've talked about it before. One of the ways to use this bait, if you haven't tried it, is to suspend this bait under a cork. If you have never suspended this bait under a cork to work it, you're missing out. And the reason I suspend it under a cork is if you look at this bait and you look at how the hook is set up in the back of this bait, it's set up so that that pinfish rides like that. How do pinfish feed on the grass flats? They feed just like that. Has a rattle in it. Suspend it under a cork, and you can keep it in the strike zone much longer. You can use your currents. Yes, sir.
For those that want to know about the mirror deans and any of the mirror lures, Mike had Eric Botnick, the owner, come out and set up the new display, and he put in his picks that he used.
Yes.
So you want to check that out.
Check the mirror deans out. They're up here. It's an amazing product. Eric's daughter and my son went to school together, so I've known Eric and Frank Botnick forever. Frank is a fisherman down in Charlotte Harbor and a really great charter captain down there, but don't get on his wrong side.
Oh, yeah. He and Scott Moore, as good as there is down here, they got 1.5 to 2 years of clients set up already.
Yes.
And I have not had the misfortune of seeing it, but I've heard of his epic the releases of energy.
Yes. That is a really great way to put it. Epic releases of energy that I will be using.
And they're twins. They're
Yes,
identical twins.
Eric and his brother Frank, and I can tell you, if you're in an area where Frank wants to fish, he will make sure that you know he wants to fish there. So I'm just saying. But I will tell you, I learned a really great technique from both Frank and from Scott Moore. And one of those things as a captain that I found is a trolling motor on a flat. When you're using your trolling motor on the flat and you're moving along and you're trying to position yourself, and it might be a rather windy day, sometimes it's very difficult to use your trolling motor to get where you want to go, and the fish hear you. And I have gotten in the water and seen these guys in the water moving their boat. And I have done that, and I can tell you, in order, and this was before power pole came along. So now that you have power pole and you have twin power poles, you're able to do a lot better at positioning the boat and keeping the boat in the right positions. But in the past, before you had twin power poles, or even one power pole, which I didn't have there in the beginning when I started, John was just getting his business started out of his garage. I'm dating myself, I'm sorry. We would take the boats and we push them along, and then I would stand with my back against the gunnel of the boat, and I'd position the boat, and my clients would be in the boat, and I had my hands on the gunnel. I'm standing in water waist deep, and I'm telling them where to cast and what to do, and then I have the net, and when the fish comes up, you net the fish up, you can let them do their thing, and then they put it back in the water. As an angler, it's a hybrid between wade fishing and actually being in the boat fishing. I can tell you, however, I tried that in the Keys with some clients. We were after bonefish, and I was on a beautiful flat, and the wind was howling, and I couldn't push pole, and I couldn't use the trolling motor. So I said, I'll just get in the water, and I'll just move the boat that way, and I'm in the front of the boat, and I'm maneuvering the boat along, and it was a little Ranger Bay boat, a little Ranger Banshee, and I'm moving the boat along, and in front of me, all of a sudden, I start seeing these fish showering out of the water, and they're bonefish, and they're showering. What the heck? why are all these fish coming out of the water? Well, the hair on the back of my neck really stood up pretty quickly, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna get out of the water. And I got out of the water and got on the bow of the boat, and by the time I sat on the bow, turned around and stood up, I had two of the biggest bull sharks I've ever seen coming right down the edge, and all those bonefish were showering. And I appreciated it because after those big sharks went through, they pushed all of that bonefish, all of them went up onto this flat and kind of moved in, and we sat there and for hours caught bonefish after bonefish after bonefish because these sharks had pushed the fish up there. So a moral to that story is not only do sharks do that, but porpoise do that. And a lot of people say, oh my God, here I am, I'm fishing, and the porpoise are coming in and they're gonna screw up my fishing. No, they're not. They might for a second screw up your fishing, but if a porpoise goes into an area and feeds along a shoreline and then he's gone and leaves, guess what follows right behind where those porpoise are? Other predatory fish.
My bait.
Ah, that's exactly right. You're going to cast into that area and you're going to fish that area. I have found oftentimes, and they are, because they are fishermen and they're better fishermen than we are, they know exactly where the fish are. So I will mark the spot where that porpoise has just gone in and just busted up the shoreline. I will mark that spot and I will go back to that spot and I will fish it and I will catch fish. So it's a little trick. Learn about it. They don't eat all the fish out of that school of redfish or out of that group of snook. They'll get one and off they go, unless they're